Okay. Sorry, my apologies. I lay down for a nap and then the alarm didn't set an alarm for this. Okay. So thank you everyone for your patience. We'll try to finish on time or early so everyone can break for dinner. So last class we talked about how to determine the venue and the audience. So today, what we're going to cover is how to write the introduction for your research paper. So I'm sharing screen right now. I've given this presentation multiple times. I think this is very critical to how you write your paper. Um, it is my belief that this introduction and how you work through the organization of your paper will determine if your paper is accepted or not. So it's very important to have that central story, and this is the critical storytelling that's going to make your paper convincing to the reviewers. So all my students who sort of go through these steps for writing are pretty good at getting their paper into findings because, if you work on something for 4 months, it's a findings paper. If you work on something for a year, then maybe that could be something that's more significant. Okay, so let's go into the introduction of your research paper. This is a presentation put together by Kate Seiko, my colleague, and is really, really well done. Okay, so what are the important elements of an introduction? So please feel free to, unmute and answer or just type your answer. So what are the most important parts of an introduction? Oh, great. People have already typed in. Summary? Yes. Brief summary, yeah, like an executive summary, absolutely. Anything else? Background? That usually comes after if that's very good, Ify, that usually comes after the introduction. Oh, background. Sorry, yes, you're right. The background. Sorry, the literature review comes after. Yes, background, very good. Anyone else? Yes, very good, Kose. That is absolutely. You need to convince the reader right away. Why is the important you're tackling important? Why is it worth solving? And even more important than that, yes, motivations with the problem. More important than that, why is your solution the one that they should pay attention to? It's all a really like a advertisement all wrap up in one. Anyone else want to write? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for their answers. These are all very important parts of an introduction, and it seems like many of you have tried writing a paper before, so you've sort of worked on the structure previously. Okay, so in terms of the introduction, this is how to write from an introduction to a research paper in 3 easy steps. 1, 2, 3. So you start with the introduction, right? You make a plan based on your introduction. So the introduction is the plan of how your research is going to go. Then you write based on that framework of the introduction you put together, and then edit, 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 and make it refined and better. So this is the PhD comics. So this is Cecilia. She's like, on her nth year in the PhD, and she's saying, I need to transfer my thoughts from my head to the screen. And that's often what happens. And that's why I do the writing workshop early so that you can start writing early. And she's saying, come on, write, 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 transmit, transmit, transmit. So we want to get, our thoughts on paper through some review process. We want to go through the rigor of me reviewing it, your co-authors reviewing it, but also having the reviewers in the field review it. Okay, so step 1 is make a plan. I think some of you have, in your answer, some of these is revealed, right? In bullet points, what you want to say is, 1, what is your contribution? Even more important than solving a difficult problem is that you are making a contribution to solving that problem in the field. I know it's very daunting, especially for a PhD, but I believe all of you can do it. I believe in you. The contribution could be super tiny. It could be like, we have this data set, we solve this very small problem, or there's this little gap and we solve it. The second is, what problem is it solving? So your contribution and what problem is it solving? And then third is the evaluation that prove it. So really 3 simple questions to your plan. Your contribution, what problem is it solving? Most of us here are working on low resource problem. So low resource language. So that is a problem. And then the evaluation then is your experiments that prove that. So it's important to realize this early on before you start, doing all kinds of fancy experiments, because I didn't know how to do this in my PhD. So I did a lot of experiments that were not very useful that were not used in the paper. But this is sort of a quick plan. So if you could, uh, in just on a piece of paper, write down for your problem, what is your contribution? What problem are you solving? And what is your evaluation that solves it? So I'm just going to put a 1-minute timer here. And it will be important for you to write it down so that or if you feel motivated, you can also type it in the chat. So let's go back. Oh, okay, I'm gonna log back in, so I'll be back in 2 seconds so that I can put you in breakout rooms.
Could you share your slides with us?
Okay, great. I'm back and I have breakout room access as well. But we'll do that after exercise too. Okay. So does anyone want to share? We can either put it in the chat if you feel shy or unmute. Go ahead, Mason.
So for my group and our project, our contribution, our idea is basically kind of an improved URL that includes more information about low resource languages, maybe uses more techniques to better gauge language similarity. The problem that's solving, obviously, is the issues with URL that we identified or that was identified in an earlier report. You can all hear me,
And
right?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, because I have to
And
speak
also,
quiet because
and
I'm in a
also,
room.
yep, and also the reproducibility study and also the literature review
Mhm.
showing how insufficient it is.
And how there's been more reports that have come out since then showing other techniques that can be used, like the one I read earlier today, about
Mhm.
more techniques that can be used to better improve the similarity and better results overall. And then what was the final bullet point?
Evaluation. Oh, am I not sharing? Hold on. I am sharing screen. Can everyone see it?
I just see your background on your computer and that's it.
Let's try again. And I'm still recording, right?
Yeah, it says you're
Okay.
recording.
The evaluation, so results, tables, graphs,
Yeah.
figures.
Yeah, we've seen so far that Uriel has good success with high resource languages through the reports, and we've seen other techniques and literature reviews that have been improving the results of Uriel. And we know that, like, based on what we've seen with Uriel, if we can get more information for low resource languages, then it'll have similar success to the high resource languages, which have had information, high resource, more information.
So evaluations are your experiments, your results. But yes, I think in the paper we just submitted at 8 a.m. this morning, there were some heat maps and we had some heat maps, and then we have some distribution plots. Obviously, the next iteration of the paper, there'll be a different contribution. So, but thank you for sharing. Okay, so that's an example. Let's move on. So, yeah, so we're going to use as example Feifei Li Feifei's paper. So Li Feifei obviously, created a data set and image that changed the landscape of image into deep learning. Andre Kapathy, I think you all read his articles on transformers and attention. Yeah, so this work is called DenseCap, and it's a neural network for dense captioning. And we're going to go through the first page of this paper. I'm a firm believer, and I used to teach interview 101, and first impressions matter. So same thing with the resume, same thing for an interview. The first 10 seconds could make a prejudgment of in your interview. So same thing with your paper. The first 10 seconds of looking at this first page of your paper the reviewer probably already has a first impression. So to me, this first paper page has to be perfect, has to give the good impression. So usually with students who have a really bad literature review written, I tell them to get rid of it in the first page and just put it at the end until it's improved. Right. So step one is making a plan. So in this paper by Li Feifei, we're just going to look at the first page. The contribution is they propose dense captioning called DenseCap using a convolutional neural network. And they designed an end-to-end model. So that is their contribution. If you skim this first page quickly, you can probably skim that from the abstract as well as the introductory paragraph. We'll go through it in more detail in a bit. Then we have the problem that they identify, which is, current method failed. So where's that in the, I think it said, yeah, so this is an introduction, but it says so current method failed, or no one has tried this. So that is the problem in the current state of the art. And then the evaluation is something like we compare the baseline X on data set Y, which is why all of you, when the students who are when you're getting training for your project, you have a baseline, right? This is the baseline of what we're comparing ourselves against on this data set Y. So you all have a data set. So Koze, what is your baseline and what is your data set?
Our data sets come from other public available data sets such as the FA between 200 and the LTRX.
Mm-hmm.
And our baseline models are the base models we trained, such as the Llama 2, Llama, and the Apro language model, and
Good.
in LLB or
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So in our SIP 200 paper of 200 languages from Flores, our data set was actually Flores 200 with classification that was annotated by our students. And then our baseline was actually a multi-layer perceptron. We went really basic. Just it's a classification.
Okay.
It was a classification task
Oh, I
on
see.
us
Yeah,
on
yeah.
us. Yeah, so it was a multi-layer perceptron, but we also compare against others. So yeah, so this is Feifei Li's work, but you hear about examples of two other works. And then in the introduction, you probably want to say, we have promising results, and then just have a little teaser. You don't have to go into great details. Okay. What we want to get to is that in your paper, one idea like this, a good idea, is better than having many ideas, right? This is too many ideas to follow. Usually I would say, like, if you have many ideas, pick the 3 stronger ones and make a coherent story. So in the paper that we just submitted this morning, we had 3 things that we emphasized, right? We said we did the reproducibility study. We found a bunch of we found a bunch of missing values. We found a bunch of undefined things and they couldn't be reproduced. And then I think we also had like the literature review that identify a giant gaping hole from the 200 papers we reviewed. So, one idea, just one aha idea that you have, not like, too many ideas. I think I tried to do this in my PhD and it got super confusing. But yeah, too many things at once, use the keep it simple, the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. Sorry. But it's just like simpler is better. There was a series of papers at one point that just says like ridiculously easy or super simple ways of doing this. And those were really elegant papers. It's easier to write elegant than to write messy. Sorry, it's harder to write elegant stories, and it takes more sort of thought process and planning. Okay. So first, now that you have your 3 simple bullets, contribution, problem, and evaluation, now you can structure your introduction in these 5 points. So first is the task you're trying to solve. For NLP is super easy. Usually there's like a task that you're in charge of solving, whether it be, a sequence tagging task like part of speech tagging, name entity recognition, or it is, for most of us, translation, neural machine translation, using different models. Some of I guess we're done doing multilingual pre-trained sequence to sequence models. Nowadays, we're mostly doing decoder models. But there's different tasks that we can solve. The second thing is you want to talk about the state of the art. I used to get in trouble with this a lot in my PhD. I'm just using myself as a flaw because I had a very flawed research experience. So so state of art, as in like, if you miss some of the latest papers or some of the most recent papers, the reviewer would not believe your work as much. So it's important to have some of the latest works, but also know some of the important works. At least have some of them. Usually the reviewers will name at least 1 to 3 papers that we missed, which is great. That means they can give us a lot of feedback. And ARR reviewers are some of the nicest reviewers that you've ever met. Like 6C and ARR, nicest reviewers ever. Very, very kind. And then 3, so once you have the state of the art of, just the latest literatures and why your work should sit in that literature. So 3 is the flaws in the literature that you are going to solve. So, you don't have to cover all the literature. Like the state of the art is not a step-by-step tutorial going from hidden Markov models to transformers. Like that's what I teach you in class. That's not what you're doing here. Here, you're just picking the latest papers and saying, oh, look, they missed this. For us, it's usually pretty easy. Like usually they miss the low resource languages. Usually they miss multilinguality. Usually they can't cover more than English. So typically low resource language, that's what we talk about. So you want to talk about the flaw in the state of art and then your idea or solution to solving that problem. So how does what you do solve this problem in the current community or literature? And then 5 is prove that it works. So 5 is all your experiments, right? All the baselines. Different people have different ways of proving it works. And this is the way I read papers as well. I like skim for the task. What's the state of the art? How do they solve it? What is their solution? And then prove that it works. And that's usually how I review papers now. I sort of look at that. So yeah, this is usually easier for beginners to start with the structure. So we're going to go through Fei Li's dense cap paper step by step. So first, yeah, so here is the paper. There's the title, and we have an abstract. So titles written for a generic audience, so thousands and thousands of people will read the titles. So it has to be like an advertising or a newspaper headline that needs to catch your attention. Abstract will be read by thousands of people, so it has to be easily understandable. And then in the introduction, we have the 5 elements, right? We have, remember, task, state of the art, flaw, your idea, proof that it works. So here's the task, the state of the art, the flaw. So this is all written in Fei's, I guess, Justin Johnson's paper. The idea, and not the proof that they work. So they had 94,000 images from 4 million regions, and then they show it, the code and the data is public. And this eventually led to like the AI revolution, right? There was a deep, dark AI winter. And because they had this data available, they were able to show how effective deep learning was. So here is, so title, abstract. Another thing that's very important on page 1, a lot of students don't do this, and I'm really, really, really emphasize we need to have this, is a very good figure 1. It makes all the difference in like just getting the message of your paper across, right? So then you have like a catchy title, a nice short summary abstract, and a fantastic figure that just gets the message of the entire paper. So that just in this, even like, I don't know, in web development, you talk about above the scroll, right? So like just in the first half here, that the reader and even the reviewer can easily be convinced and get an idea of what your entire paper is about. So, okay, so let's talk about the first one, the task. So, what can it do? State the task that your model solves. Usually it's just like a 1 quick sentence, and you can mention some practical application. So that's basically up here, right? The background as, sorry, I'm just going to check. Oh no. Okay. The background as Iffy mentioned in the top here. And then we also have all these, yeah, so why do we need this? Again, a mistake I made during my PhD was absolutely like, you want to avoid reader frustration. You don't want the reader finding out exactly what was the problem being solved 7 pages in. And they're like, oh, they're actually doing detection and not classification. That's frustrating to figure out much later. So it's important to get the problem there up front so that the reader you sort of frame the problem for them so they understand right away. Then you see all these literature here are the state of the art. So what is the best that can be done right now? So, you cite recent works and direct competitions. If you're using a particular data, what are some recent results for the data? If you're using, you want to get the reader excited about the area, about, you're making progress and there's exciting results coming. A common mistake here, so you can see here that they sort of saying, there's significant progress in image classification, lists a bunch of paper. And then, the first one is detection, lists a bunch of paper. And then another is captioning, lists a couple papers. You see, they didn't go through a painstaking, 10-page literature review. So very common with, I guess, master students or junior students is that they write a huge paragraph and they start from first principles. It's like, oh, well, first you learn the convolutional neural network, and here is what it is, and here's all the papers. No, it's just like a bird's eye view. Think of it more as a listing of groups of paper. I mean, you don't want to diminish prior work because you're standing on the shoulder of giants. So it's better to praise previous work rather than to criticize it too much. So there's an art form to writing criticisms and research without bashing the other researcher, like the existing research, by saying, oh, here's the gaps, here's the holes, and we're filling that hole in a diplomatic way. Okay. Now that you've stated the state of the art, next you want to talk about the flaw, right? What can't we do yet? So what is the critical flaw in the state of the art? And this flaw has to match, right? Here's the problem, and here's my solution. Here's the research question, here's the research answer. So you're going to point out the question, you're going to point out the problem, and then you're going to come and offer the solution. Why should the reader care? Does this matter? Why can't previous methods XYZ be used to solve this? You engage the reader here, right? With an example, like a lot of the times, if it's a little harder to understand, like NLP is usually pretty simple to understand because it's text. But I used to work in sequence analysis in bioinformatics, and usually you had to offer like a little example, or we also did time series at one point, which is really hard to visualize all the time like the EGG time series. So usually a visualization or example is really good to just help the reader understand, like, oh, what is the problem? Why is it important? Um, why is it an important problem to consider, and why I really wish someone understand it. So this first paragraph is actually really important to just bring the audience into your world. Just get them on the level playing field of, this is what you need to understand. This is what why my problem is important. And then next we have the idea. So your idea, which is the hero to the hero to the rescue. So, like Batman, Spider-Man, I don't know, Superman, you're fixing this flaw, this gap in the research. So they put their idea over here. So, the flaw is the size inversion results, two directions has separate. In this work, we connect the task and introduce this. So they introduce this dense cap. So you keep it brief, just the main intuition. And here they say we solve it with fully like a dense layer, a convolutionary dense layer. And then you don't have to go into all the details, right? Just give them a highlight of what your new idea is. As a tip, if you have two ideas, describe the flaw and then your idea, then the second flaw, then your idea. But usually just keep it to one to keep it simple. And then one thing, so we're gonna sort of take a detour right now and talk about the importance of figure one. I always emphasize figure one. I think it really increases your rate of being accepted as a paper when your first figure is really good. The better the figure one, the more likely the paper will be accepted. If you look at some of our Nature papers, the figures are really, really visually pleasing. Okay, so it's a must-have for a vision paper. This image conveys the flaw simultaneously with the flaw in the state of the art, plus the contribution, the new idea in the paper visually at the same time. So they say it's like an advertising for your paper, right? Like this image is like of like a split-second advertising for the the reader. The caption, the figure caption should describe the photo. So many readers only look at the image, and if this is interesting, then they'll go check your other figures, like your tables and your results, your other interesting graphs, your figures. So yeah, so as I mentioned, this caption should be self-explanatory. Like by reading this, we should be able to understand what this entire figure is about. The reader doesn't want to be digging through your main text to figure out what it's about. And same thing for all the figures in your paper, they have to be self-contained. Just looking at the figure with a caption should clearly help them understand what it's about. They don't want to be digging through the paper. Yeah. Someone has a question? Yes.
I know it's just the
Yeah,
kind
okay.
of carpathy where it came
Yes.
from. But
Yes,
yeah.
yes, Kaparthi. There you go. Okay. All right, so here's figure one. So here is the first figure one. It just says dense caption, and it says, we addressed dense caption tasks with model that jointly generates both dense and rich annotations in a single forward pass. So here is captioning. So you can see a bunch of sentences describing things, and it's dense because there's so many. Oh no, what's going on? Okay. Now, what is better is this image here that shows a flaw in prior work. So you can see my mouse here. There's a dimension here about label density going from one single label of the entire image to multiple image regions indicating the denseness. So this goes from classifying a single label image to detecting multiple regions and classifying them and categorizing them. So here's a cat, here's a skateboard, where this entire image is just a cat. So this is label density here. One image, many image regions. Then there's so this is a beautiful image, like they've outdone themselves. So this also requires some careful, creative thinking and problem solving. So the second, oh, come on, mouse. The second dimension here is on the label complexity. So you can see that the single label here is just cat, but a captioning label is a sequence, is a generation of a sentence, a cat riding a skateboard. So it's an entire sentence, a sequence. So a single word label versus a sequence generated based on the image. That's captioning versus classification. Then instead of just detection, dense captioning, then is each of these regions having a caption. So no, an orange spotted cat, skateboard with red wheels, cat riding a skateboard. So very dense. So again, similar captioning, but now we can see the contribution, right? You're simultaneously contributing to the density of the labels as well as the complexity of the sequence, right? It's not just one word, but a sequence of words and then many, many of them. And that's what they're saying in their idea is that they unified two interconnected tasks. They unified the label density test and the label complexity test into one single. So as you can see, this image really, like now that I've explained this image to you, you probably know what the rest of the paper is about. Like you can go and read the paper very easily. Like I don't know how many of you here has taken, visual image processing or like vision, but now I've just told you what the entire paper is about, and you can go and read it from just looking at this picture. Lovely. Perfect. Usually I play this Kahoot game, but I think we don't have time. It's called Match the Figure to the Title, but anyway, we'll do it next time. Okay. So back to the 5 rules. So the very last rule is proof to show that whatever you claimed about your idea and your contribution and your how you solve the flaw, prove that it works. So, you want to say a little bit about evaluations and baseline. So what is your evaluation method? For translation, we are evaluating using, is it like a gold standard data set, or are we back translating with GPT? Or, what methods are we evaluating and what metrics are we evaluating with? Classification has specific metrics based on accuracy, F1 score. Translation, a whole different metrics. We, for low resource language, use SBBLA and CRHF++. And then the baselines, right? So what is the baseline? Like the simplest solution we can, like, it's sort of like when you go to an interview, the first thing you solve is the simplest solution. That's the baseline. And then you try to build on top of that. But of course, in the introduction, you don't want to go into a great detail about your proof, your results. Don't give it away, just a teaser saying, oh, we do better than the state of the art. Read more and find out. So here it says, our method lowers error by 20% compared to previous method. 20 is a big percentage. So that is very intriguing. I think one of the papers that Prof. David and I are working on right now, he's going to claim that, look, the results are awful for African languages. We are sitting at the threshold. They're horrible using all these new models. Come read out more of our paper to find out why they're so terrible, why the results are so terrible. So bad results are not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's just saying that we need to do more work on African languages. Okay. And then, so that's something that you can workshop on with your group. You don't have to do this now, but I'll just, something to keep in mind and we'll cover this in the last class again, is dense cap. the title here, DenseCaf, fully convolutionalized localized neural network for dense. So this is a good title because it's very specific to what this entire paper is about. It's about dense captioning on the dimension of density and complexity with an added layer. A network describing images. Why do you think that's bad? You can type it in the chat if you want. Why is that a bad title? Yeah, that could be any paper, any CNN paper. Sorry, CNN is convolutionary neural net. A deep learning approach based on convolutional neural net. Why? That's also too broad, right? So, it has to be specific, but also brief, like not too many words, so concise and brief, and also like descriptive. So it's unique. Like DenseCap is so unique to this paper. It will not be like sort of like Mason Shipton will Kose, sorry, I'm gonna butcher this, Uemura. Like that's a unique name, right? Hopefully there isn't a second person with that name. So, it's very specific to this paper. Memorable, so if you use acronyms and abbreviations, remember it's easy to pronounce, right? Like fully connected localized network, that's like not a cool name, but DenseCap is really cool. But watch out, don't make it too corny or too like it's a plane, it's a bird, like, nothing too crazy. Actually, I have a slide on titles, but I'll show you at the end. And then the abstract you'll write. So title you'll decide at the end. Usually by when you finish your paper, then you can sort of think about your title together. Usually the professors will come up with usually the experienced professors will come up with a really nice title, even better than I can. Usually if I write the paper, I will get too into the thick of it and forget to come up with a catchy and critical title. The abstract you also write at the end, because after you write the entire paper, this is a summary of your task, your contribution. You write this last. You can just really cut and paste, maybe like the summary, like one sentence for each paragraph and rephrase it, and then you're done. But the difference here is you don't only copy and paste. The rephrasing is that you're going to rephrase it so that a general audience can read it. Like this needs to be so understandable that you can show this to your grandmother and she'll be like, my grandchild has produced this piece of work and I know what it is. So a grandmother should be able to understand this. Like your 6-year-old cousin or your grandmother can read the abstract and be like, oh, my cousin or like my grandchild is doing really interesting work and I understand what's going on. Like I've tried to explain my PhD thesis once to my brother and he kind of rolled his eye at me. So I didn't explain it at a level that a grandmother or a 6-year-old should understand. Okay. So after you have this outline that I just went through, what you want to do is you want to write. So, here's Cecilia again. Like, good morning, Cecilia. Here's your draft. I took the liberty of writing myself when you sleep. What? Your draft is finished. That's amazing. You don't have to do any writing. Wow. I am totally dreaming. The unicorn gave it away. So, yeah. So once you have that outline I just gave, you should have your introduction in some several dozen bullet points based on the 3 main things you have to answer and the 5 tasks that you have to cover. It's a good time to run it by others, so that's why you want to workshop it as a group on your paper together. And also, for each bullet points, you want to put them, you want to run it by me. If your project has a co-supervisor, like most of the project has another professor supervising it, it's good to get their feedback. Expand each bullet points into a sentence or paragraph, and then you fill in the detail. So, and then after that, you write, edit. The creative process, inspiration, creation, self-loathing. Apparently some lucky people can write near perfect text in one go, but most of us not so lucky. So, luckily for ARR, most of my students only write one draft, but the PhD process, I wrote many drafts because, an ACL finding paper or a workshop paper is very tiny contribution, but a PhD is like 3 major contributions that could take 1 year each, and usually it takes a couple drafts to get it perfect. So, in terms of research, perseverance is the long goal. So it's important to get feedback from your advisors, your lab mates, your collaborators, which is why I've sort of cushioned you with a lot of support so that you're not doing this alone. And I believe that every single one of you have the capability and have the support to get this done. Okay, so now I'm going to put you into breakout groups so that you can work on the 5 points together. And then what I would expect is that you submit to me when you're ready, the first 3 points, and like not necessarily in bullets, but a couple of maybe a couple of sentences each. And then same thing for the task, especially for people who have like, you know, looming upcoming deadlines. So let me see if I can do breakout rooms. Okay. Okay, so I've created breakout rooms. So Adia's here. So Adia, maybe you and your team can go into room 1.
Which team? Sorry. 6E or Uriel?
Probably 60. Uriel doesn't like you haven't done I don't know. Amane, you can decide. Do you want to work on 60 or Uriel? Oh,
I'm only doing 60, right? So,
Fernando's here. So okay, so Adia, why
oh
don't you
yeah,
yeah, so Adia,
sure.
why don't you do Uriel in room 1? So I'm gonna name Uriel. And then I'm just doing alphabetical. And then do you have things to talk about for the clinical, or is Wendy writing it?
When you already wrote abstract and introduction, so it's already done. We don't really have to write it.
Oh, okay, fine then. Then maybe 60 in room 2.
Mm.
Um, and then okay, so I guess she is first author. Proxy. David, I think you're already on your way, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Who's
sure, I can
David?
still show.
Okay, Ethan. So translation error for Ethan.
Yeah.
And then Fiona, Iffy, Kelly. Kelly, I guess you are a line freeze, I hope. And then African LLM. I think that's everything. Oh, just enough. So some of you are not going to submit right away. Some of you are actually not close to submission. But yeah, so just workshop it, and then once you don't have to stay if you have no teammates here, or if you don't want to work on it, then we can that's fine. But hopefully I will see a draft of your proposal and or your introduction, not introduction, but like bullet point introduction, by end of this week. And so then we can share it with your co-authors. Okay?
Sorry,
Great.
Oh, any questions? Okay,
sorry,
you
this
don't
is Fiona. Do I go with Uriel or Sixy?
could you work on 60 first because the deadline is soon.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to get an intro out of 60.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Hi, Prof. Annie.
Hi,
Oh,
can you hear me?
oh yeah, I can hear you. For some
Perfect.
reason, I put like ask for help, but
Oh,
yeah,
oh yeah, you can ask me here.
Oh yeah, sure. But it's recorded though. Is it okay?
Oh, let me turn off the recording part.